Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the process where we're going to be getting buckets for the December 6th, 2016 NBA slate. My name is Stephen Porter. You can find me on Twitter at Stephen Porter Jr. Let's dive right in. We got a 6-game slate today. Highest total on the board. It's going to be the San Antonio Spurs visiting the Minnesota Timberwolves. Totals 205.5. Spurs are 4-point road favorites. Kind of an interesting slate where there's no total over 205 and there's only 6 games to pick from. But to start with the San Antonio side of the ball here, we've got Tony Parker ruled out of this game already. Minnesota has been really bad on defense, 106.5 defensive rating. And this could end up being a pace-up game for the Spurs as well. Minnesota gets off about 3 extra possessions per game. Without Tony Parker, Kawhi Leonard is seeing about a 4% usage increase. Certainly expect that to happen in this game. Think he could post a usage rate in the 33 to 35% range. His price has come way down on Draftkings. He's only 7.8K. He's had a bunch of tough matchups in a row, which has kind of limited his fantasy production. The usage has still been there, but his efficiency has certainly trended downwards. But in this game, I expect his usage to go up. I think his efficiency should also go up given the opponent. And I could see this game definitely staying close and definitely shooting out a little bit. I think it should probably be the highest scoring game on the night. So I really like Kawhi Leonard in this spot. Cash games, tournaments, either way. Have him in both of my cash game lineups right now. Think he's giving you probably a 40-point floor in this matchup, and I think he can kind of get you to maybe 55 DraftKings points if he should kind of come in towards the higher end of his range of outcomes. I think LaMarcus Aldridge is also very interesting in this game. Only 6.3K on DraftKings. Expect him to probably play minutes in the mid-30s. Wouldn't be surprised if he doubled here. Think he's probably going to give you somewhere between 30 and maybe 45 DraftKings points. If he should come in right in the middle of that range, you're going to be pretty happy with his output in cash games. And I doubt he'll be owned at all in tournaments. So I definitely think he's a cash and/or tournament play. Last guy I want to look at for the Spurs is going to be Patty Mills. Patty Mills is pretty cheap here, only 4.2K on DraftKings. Definitely going to see a usage bump without Tony Parker in the lineup. Could see maybe mid to upper 20s minutes here. Again, should be pretty efficient going up against Minnesota. Expect him to have pretty good usage, pretty good efficiency, only 4.2K. I think he's a pretty good cash and or tournament target in this game as well. I'm not really interested in playing Pau Gasol. I think there's better options at his price point. He just looks kind of old and not very spry on the court right now. Not really a guy I want to be invested in. I guess if you want to run a game stack, you could play him, but not a guy that I'm really looking to target here. For the Spurs, for me, it's going to be Kawhi, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Patty Mills. Bringing it back on the other side of the ball with the Timberwolves. We know where the usage is going to be on most nights. It's Wiggins and it's Karl-Anthony Towns. The thing about this matchup is I'm expecting Kawhi Leonard to match up with Andrew Wiggins, which automatically takes Wiggins out of play. And I would expect Wiggins to take, he's usually around 20 to 30% usage. I would expect him to be closer to 20% usage. And I think a lot of that extra usage could funnel towards Karl-Anthony Towns in this matchup. Pau Gasol, the aforementioned, is looking really, really bad, especially on the defensive end of the floor. If he should play a pretty big chunk of Karl-Anthony Towns' minutes, I think Karl-Anthony could really dominate that matchup. Not too worried about Dwayne Dedmon or LaMarcus Aldridge or whomever we're matching up with Karl-Anthony. I think he can get over in this matchup. He's obviously a supreme talent. We know that. We've seen some ceiling games out of him already this year. And I think he could come in towards the upper end of his range of outcomes in this game. And we're getting a discount because DraftKings is pricing people going up against the Spurs as though the Spurs are one of the elite defenses in the league, and they just aren't so far this year. They're giving up 102.5 points per 100 possessions. Obviously not terrible, but certainly not kind of where they've been over the last couple of years, about 7 to 8 points worse than we've kind of expected them to be. So I could definitely see Minnesota hanging in this game. I could definitely see Karl-Anthony Towns getting over. I think Karl-Anthony and Kawhi is a really nice stack. I think they should be the main contributors for their teams. Again, I'm off Wiggins entirely for Minnesota. If you want to play somebody other than Karl-Anthony Towns, I think Gorgie Jang is definitely interesting. Again, we're not afraid to target San Antonio with big guys. Gorgie's price is coming down a little bit, and nobody's going to play him in this matchup. Definitely a strong tournament target. Wouldn't touch him in cash games. Kind of same thing for Zach LaVine. I always like playing Zach LaVine in tournaments just because I think he's carrying a really, really high ceiling anytime he steps on the court, because he can get hot from three and get to the rim at will. Has a tougher matchup with Danny Green, so I'm not falling over myself to roster him, but I still think he's playable if you want to play a game stack. And Ricky Rubio is really, really cheap on DraftKings. I think he's like 4.7K on DraftKings, which is just really, really cheap for somebody that who could play in the mid 30s minutes. We never know where his price is going to be on any given night, but I'm not concerned with his individual matchup. I just don't know about the minutes or the usage. If he should pick up a little bit of that extra usage that I'm expecting Wiggins to lose, and he does play into the mid-30s, he could give you a very viable fantasy stat line here. I think he's an awesome tournament target. Not going to play him in cash because, like I said, the floor is just too low with the shot attempts in the minutes. But I definitely think he's a guy that you can fit into a game stack or just a general tournament target. So Karl-Anthony Towns is definitely my favorite play from Minnesota side. I think Jang, Rubio, and LaVine are interesting tournament targets. You really got to like these guys' minutes. You know, Thibodeau is going to run them out there, 38, 40 minutes if the game is going to be close, which I think it probably should be. There's always risk that San Antonio is going to blow somebody out, but they just haven't really been doing that this year. So I'm pretty comfortable targeting Kawhi, LaMarcus, Aldridge, Patty Mills, and Karl-Anthony Towns all in cash games on this slate. So we'll move on to the next game. Next highest total is going to be the New York Knicks traveling to visit the Miami Heat. The Heat are 2-point favorites at home. Total is 203.5. This line was a pick'em earlier, so there's obviously some money coming in on the Heat in this spot. The Heat are really, really banged up. I think the one guy that's questionable for them right now is Josh Richardson. I think it's a possibility that he plays. I don't think he's been officially ruled out. But the usual guys, Winslow, Waiters, all those guys have been ruled out. So in this game, definitely want to target some Miami guys. The Knicks have been really bad on defense, 107.2 defensive rating. They're a little bit of a pace-up game, almost 3 possessions extra per game for the Knicks. Goran Dragic is really the guy I want to target. Saw a 30.8 usage rate in the last game. Wouldn't be surprised to see him post the same kind of rate in this game. Not really concerned with playing against Derrick Rose here in the individual matchup. Think he should dominate the ball. Think he should get plenty of usage. Think this game should stay close. Think he'll be trying to kind of close it out if they get a lead, or pull them back if they should fall behind. I think he's a really, really strong cash and/or tournament target on both sites. 7.3K on DraftKings. That's come up a little bit, but I think that's a reasonable price to pay for him. Currently have him in my cash game roster right now, and I'm pretty comfortable with using him there. Hassan Whiteside's the next guy to look at here. 22.4% usage in the last game. I think that could trend up a little bit here, but his price is just through the roof. 9.6K on DraftKings. I mean, I think there's certainly a possibility that he pays it off in this matchup, but there's some center plays that I think might be a little stronger points per dollar on the slate. So I'm not sure that I'm going to play him in cash, but I definitely have a couple Dragic and Hassan tournament stacks for sure. don't have a starting lineup for the Knicks just yet, but Joakim Noah is supposed to be playing in this game. He is getting roasted in the pick and roll. Talk about a guy that is just old and completely washed, can't move. He has no chance in the Hassan Dragic pick and roll. So I think I think that's a really good stack. I think Hassan could get plenty of open looks at the rim. Certainly some offensive board potential as well, even though Joakim is a pretty good guy as far as defensive rebounding goes. You know he's going to box out at least. He's not going to be caught in the wrong spot when it goes up. But definitely an avenue for Hassan to kind of dominate in this matchup. Just like I said, little too expensive for me in this spot when I could play Towns or Drummond or Gasol or Gobert or a lot of different guys. So I'm probably not going to use him in cash. Definitely have him in tournaments though. I think Josh McRoberts is interesting in this matchup. Had 28 minutes in the last game. His minutes are trending up a little bit. Had a 17.9% usage rate. He's only 3.2K on DraftKings, and he is center and power forward eligible. Don't think he's the worst play. I mean, he's not the best individual talent, but he can shoot the three a little bit. Pretty good passer. So I think there is definitely reasonable expectation that he could get to 20-25 DraftKings points in this matchup, and that would certainly do it for you. I don't have him in my cash game roster, but I think he's a guy that you could look at if you really need to save salary and or fill the center position in cash. Probably not the best tournament target, but I've used him like once. I just don't see the ceiling that you need for a tournament. And I think that, Rashawn Holmes, who we'll get to later, has a little bit better ceiling in a similar price point, but definitely a guy to keep an eye on. Two other guys that are going to see minutes for Miami are going to be Wayne Ellington and Rodney McGruder on the wings. Assuming that Josh Richardson doesn't play, if Richardson would play, that would probably eat into mostly McGruder's minutes. These guys are going to have kind of a tough matchup. One of them's going to have to check Carmelo Anthony, which is probably not going to go well for them. Not really interested in playing either of them. I mean, Wayne Ellington is getting a decent amount of shots. You could take a tournament flyer on him, I suppose, but he's just not a guy I'm really targeting. Same thing with Rodney McGruder. McGruder sees like an 8 to 12 usage rate on any given night. Just not a guy I want to play, even if he's going to have 35 plus minutes. I think there are better punts on the slate. Going on to the other side of the ball, got the New York Knicks. We know the three guys that we're going to target on any given day for the Knicks is going to be Carmelo Anthony. Usage is usually in the 28 to 30% range. Like I just mentioned, he's going to have, assuming Josh Richardson sits out, he's going to have a nice individual matchup. He's been so up or down, though, on the year. I don't think I could target him in cash when he's only 200 cheaper than Kawhi Leonard. I'm going Kawhi Leonard there every single time. But I think he's a guy that you can use in a game stack. Certainly has a little bit of a ceiling here because he could definitely see some efficiency in the high volume that he always sees because he's Carmelo. Derrick Rose, never a guy I'm looking to play. Don't want to play him in this matchup. 6.4K on DraftKings, way too expensive for me. I will either go down or go up from that price point in cash. I don't even want to play him in tournaments. Just don't see it here. Miami's been pretty reasonable defensively on the year, and I don't think they're really going to let Derrick Rose kind of run wild on them. Kristaps Porzingis is awesome. Never know where his usage is going to be on a given night. Usually Carmelo stays pretty solid in that upper 20s, but Kristaps or Derrick Rose will normally kind of fluctuate between like 20 and 30. If we could get Rose to kind of trend down towards 20, Kristaps will usually go up towards 30. Should certainly see efficiency in this matchup. I'm not worried about the individual matchup with McRoberts or anybody else that the Heat would put on him. You just always have to worry about his shot volume. And there's a lot of really good punts at the power forward position, so I'm probably not going to play him in cash games, but I definitely think he has the ceiling and low ownership combo that you can play in a tournament. I think it's an interesting game stack. I've done it a couple times to play Kristaps and then bring it back with Dragic and Hassan on the other side. If this game should stay close and Kristaps sees his usage and he gets hot and they actually feed him like they should, I think all three of those guys could kind of trend towards their ceilings, and I don't know that Kristaps will be heavily owned. I'm not really interested in playing Brandon Jennings on any given night. He gets the individual matchup with Tyler Johnson, who I actually didn't mention from the Heat. I think Tyler Johnson's a really good play. Seeing the shot volume and the efficiency just hasn't been there, but that could always start to trend up. I think he's actually a reasonable cash or tournament play on this slate. But yeah, back to Jennings. Don't really want to play him. I'd rather play Patty Mills in the same price point, so I'm not going to be looking at Brandon Jennings. Really, if I'm looking at anybody from the Knicks, it's going to be Carmelo or Kristaps Porzingis. I think Kristaps has the higher ceiling and is a better target in tournaments. Not really looking at either of them in cash games because there's just better plays, points per dollar, I think. Moving on to the next game, we've got the Phoenix Suns traveling to visit the Utah Jazz. Total here is 202.5. Jazz are 6-point home favorites, which is actually pretty. It's not that high. I would expect that to be a little higher. So it sounds like Vegas thinks that Phoenix has a reasonable shot at competing in this game. And if Phoenix does compete, we're definitely going to want a piece of this game. Utah usually manages to slow down the pace because that's just what they do. They play good defense, slow the pace down. They're only 93 possessions per 48 minutes on the year, whereas Phoenix is 104.3. I think it's more likely than not that Utah kind of controls the pace of the game and forces Phoenix down into their territory. But if Phoenix would kind of come out and have effectiveness running and gunning to start, there's definitely reasonable expectation that Utah could pick up the pace here. So I don't know that I'm going to play any Phoenix guys in cash games, but what I do want to do is stack this game up under the assumption that Phoenix comes out and plays well to start the game. And I think if they do that, it's going to be on Eric Bledsoe's back. Bledsoe's got a 27.3 usage rate, usually going to hover around 25 to 30 in most games. Not too worried about the matchup with Dante Exum. I mean, I like Dante Exum, but Eric Bledsoe is a really talented player and can get over in almost any individual matchups. So I think stacking up Bledsoe with Rodney Hood and or Gordon Hayward on the other side is a really awesome tournament play. I'm not really interested in playing any of the Suns in cash games and or tournaments other than Bledsoe. Devin Booker is probably the one other guy that you could look at. Usually has a mid to upper 20s usage rate. His price is coming down. It's only 5.9K on DraftKings, but I'm just probably going to go elsewhere at the shooting guard or small forward positions. And Bledsoe is really, really cheap on DraftKings. I was tempted to use him in my cash games today, but I just can't do it. Can't trust him. He's only 7.1K, which is, I mean, they're just begging you to play him. He's been a really efficient player over the last couple of games. He's usually close to 1.5 DraftKings points per minute. I mean, if he sees 35 minutes in this game, I mean, he is going to blow through value. So, I mean, I think he's a great tournament target. I guess you could do it in cash, but I can't deal with the floor that you get with playing any of the Phoenix guys. Again, on the other side of the ball, we're going to be looking at Rodney Hood and Gordon Hayward here. George Hill is out. I've touched on before the fact that Utah is just not nearly as good on the defensive end of the ball without George Hill in the lineup, which kind of gives another take. Without Hill, Hood and Hayward are normally kind of splitting about 60 to 65% of the usage. I think it's reasonable that both of them go over 30 usage in this matchup. They were both 31.5 last game. I think they're both really strong targets. I'm leaning towards Hood in cash games right now just because he's so much cheaper than Hayward is, and there's an obvious pivot off of Hayward onto Kawhi Leonard at the same price point. So Hood is in my cash games right now. I think they're both strong cash targets. I think they're both reasonable tournament targets. Like I said, I think it's really nice to stack them up with Eric Bledsoe on the other end. I'm not too interested in anybody else on Utah's side of the ball. Rudy Gobert is a really frustrating player for me. I can't seem to get him right when I play him in good spots. He does poorly. When I don't play him, he kind of blows the top off. Since I'm not looking at him too hard today, that probably means that he's going to come in closer to the ceiling. Certainly think you could play him. I'm not going to do it in cash games. I probably need to sprinkle him in tournaments. Not the best matchup against Tyson Chandler individually. Chandler's pretty good on defensive boards. And we know Gobert has next to no usage unless he is hitting the offensive glass. So again, I just don't see it in this matchup, but when I don't play him, he does well. So main targets in this game for cash games are going to be Rodney Hood and Gordon Hayward. Bringing it back in tournaments with Eric Bledsoe, who I think is just an awesome tournament play. Moving on to the next game, we've got the Chicago Bulls traveling to visit the Detroit Pistons. Pistons are 6-point favorites. Totals 201.5. Not really too interested in this game on either side of the ball. We've got Rajon Rondo coming back to play in this game after a one-game suspension. I'm way more interested in targeting Jimmy Butler and Dwayne Wade when Rondo doesn't play. I just think there's better point per dollar plays. Detroit's really good on defense. 101.4 points per 100 possessions on the year. If I'm going to play anyone from Detroit's side of the ball, I probably want to go to Dwayne Wade, who is on a back-to-back, so it's kind of iffy there. But I'm going to kind of take the gamble that he sees a 25-plus usage rate again in this matchup, and Rondo doesn't totally screw up their whole offense like he is want to do in certain matchups. And then I think that Robin Lopez is an interesting target here. Andre Drummond hasn't been as giving on the defensive end of the ball, but Robin Lopez should definitely come in on the higher side of his minutes projection here because he's going to have to be on the floor to deal with Drummond's size at the rim. Certainly a double-double candidate here. Wouldn't be too surprised to see him go over the 30 DraftKings points that you need to pay off his 4.9K salary on DraftKings. I think he's giving you a reasonable floor and ceiling projection here. I think he's a cash and/or tournament play. Probably not going to be heavily owned, so I think he's a guy you could sprinkle in there. Wade, a guy that you could probably use in tournaments. Probably same thing with Butler. I think I'll probably stack Butler and Wade up a couple times just in case they both kind of get up towards that 30% usage rate, but I just think there's better plays on the slate. Not really looking to target Detroit's defense, and Rondo makes me less interested in targeting those guys. Not too interested in Taj Gibson on this in this matchup either. Other side of the ball, kind of the same deal. Chicago's pretty good on defense, 102.8 defensive rating on the year. This could really easily be a very slow-paced and kind of gross, no offensive efficiency matchup. If I want to target anybody from Detroit's side of the ball, it's probably going to be Marcus Morris or Andre Drummond. I don't want to play either of them in cash, but I think they're reasonable tournament targets. Morris is just good. His price is pretty low. And he could certainly get off plenty of shots. Had 12 field goal attempts in his last game, saw 35 minutes. I'm not really too interested in playing him, but I could see him kind of coming in near 40 DraftKings points, which would really pay off his salary, but just not really attractive to me. Reggie Jackson would be interesting if we would get some kind of confirmation that he would play like 30 to 35 minutes in this matchup. Came back in the last game, put up over 1 DraftKings point per minute, but he only played 23 minutes. It's certainly a really nice matchup against Rondo, who has been really giving on the defensive side of the ball. Probably wouldn't play him in cash just because there's too much uncertainty, but if word would come out that he's going to have his minutes ticked up into the 30s, I think he would be a reasonable tournament target. So again, not a whole lot that I like in this game. Robin Lopez points per dollar is probably my favorite play in this game. Next game to target is going to be the Orlando Magic visiting the Washington Wizards. Wizards are 3-point favorites here. Totals 198.5. John Wall is the obvious target on the Washington side of the ball. Him and Beal usually split usage right down the middle, right around 25 to 30. They were both 27 in the last over the last 5 games. They have an identical 27.3 usage rate. This is kind of a tough matchup. Orlando's been really good on defense, down to 100.8 points per 100 possessions on the year. And it's not like Washington's been the strongest offensive team. I think this is going to be kind of a close, kind of ugly type of game. But I think that may benefit Wall. I still think he can kind of give you like 20 points, 12 to 15 assists. He might tack up a bunch of extra rebounds and defensive statistics in this game. I definitely think he's the best play from the Washington side of the ball. I'm not too interested in Brad Beal in this matchup. Just certainly a tournament target because he's prone to go 8 for 12 from the 3-point line on any given day. But I want to target softer defenses. Markieff Morris, Marcin Gortat, Otto Porter, all in the conversation. But again, I'm just not really too interested in playing any of them. I think Wall is a cash target, especially on DraftKings. His price came down a little bit. He's only 8.7K, and like I said, I think he gets the easiest individual matchup, and he can kind of play well in the kind of gross game that I'm expecting this to be. I think Otto Porter is probably the second most interesting tournament target. Same kind of thing. I think he could probably hit the glass pretty hard and post some defensive stats here and then still get you 10 plus points. So I think he's kind of interesting, but again, not on this game a whole lot. Bring it back on the other side. One thing I always have to mention when Jeff Green plays in the Verizon Center, he scores like 25 to 30 points. Like he just can't miss from the field. He played for Georgetown in college. And every time he comes back to his old stomping grounds, he just sees incredible offensive efficiency. Certainly not a cash target because this is kind of anecdotal, but definitely a guy I think you could sneak in there in tournaments. He's only 3.7K and he is small and power forward eligible on DraftKings. Just a really low owned, high upside tournament target in this matchup. I don't really think he's going to score 30 points in this game, but I never think he's going to score 30 points when he plays the Wizards, and he always does. I'm not really interested in any of the guards. No Fournier for me, no Augustine, no Payton. But I do want to target the Orlando big men. Washington has been really soft at the rim. Marcin Gortat is just not a real legitimate rim protector. I think Nikola Vucevic and Serge Ibaka could both see mid-30s minutes, see 20 plus usage, and see some good efficiency and hit the boards pretty well. I think they're both definitely strong tournament targets in this matchup because I think they're going to come in close to their ceilings. I don't think they're going to be very highly owned. And I wouldn't try to talk you off of playing them in cash. They're not cash targets for me at the moment, but I think there's a pretty reasonable floor. I don't think Biyombo really sets up as a guy that should play a whole lot in this matchup. I think Vucevic can do enough on the defensive end against Gortat and whoever's going to come off the Washington bench. It's not like Jason Smith or Andrew Nicholson are really going to threaten you offensively. So I think Vucevic could see 30 to 35 minutes. I think he could put up a monster 50 plus point DraftKings performance here. Probably wouldn't play him in cash games, but his price is really attractive at 6.1K. I think he projects really well in this game. If you wanted to play him in cash, I could definitely see that move, and I definitely think you're going to want some tournament shares of both Vucevic and Serge. I think Vucevic is definitely the guy I would target between the two, but I think they're both in play because Serge should probably play plenty of minutes at the 4, and he sees the same kind of matchup. Moving on to the last game of the slate, we have got the Philadelphia 76ers traveling to visit the Memphis Grizzlies. Grizzlies are 8-point home favorites. Total in this game is only 194. So we've got Joel Embiid and Robert Covington and Jahlil Okafor out for Philadelphia. When all of these guys are not on the court, For the Sixers, Sergio Rodriguez leads the team with a 27.4% usage rate. Dario Saric is next at 25.8%. Ersan Ilyasova is 23.6% usage. And then we've got Richaun Holmes at a 21% usage. I think all four of these guys project well in this game. I think they could all see 30 plus minutes. I think they could all see reasonable efficiency offensively. They're not a great offensive team, especially when Embiid's not playing. But Memphis has been a little easier to target without Mike Conley in the lineup. They're giving up 101 points per 100 possessions on the year, but 104 points in the last 4 games since Conley went out with his injury. So again, I think all these guys are cash targets, tournament targets as well. I think Richaun Holmes probably projects to play like 36 plus minutes in this game. He's really their only center in this matchup. I kind of think he's a lock in this matchup for your cash games for sure. I guess I could see fading him a bit in tournaments, but I still want to be overweight on him. Just because of the minutes that he's going to see, and I think he could see reasonable efficiency here. It's not like the Memphis Grizzlies are the strongest team defensively at the rim, so I think he could kind of get it done. I think Ersan Ilyasova and Dario Saric are probably going to split the minutes at the 4. Ilyasova is probably going to have to slide down and play the 5 at some point to spell Richaun Holmes, which I guess is reasonable. I mean, I think Ilyasova probably projects to play 35 plus minutes in this matchup too. I think he's, again, another strong tournament target. Guy who can give you a 20 and 10. Strong cash target as well. Definitely want to have both of them in my lineup. They're both currently there now. Dario Saric is the one guy I'm going to get off of the 4 if I have to, just because his price is a little bit higher. But I mean, I still think he's a really good tournament and/or cash target. Probably going to see 30 plus minutes. Probably going to have a mid-20s usage rate. I think he's a lock for like 25 plus points, which is gonna give you a pretty good point per dollar return. I mean, I think it's reasonable to play all 3 of these guys because there's just so many minutes and shots opening up. But if I'm playing only 2 of them, it's going to be Ilyasova and Holmes. And then, touched on Sergio Rodriguez. He's probably going to have the highest usage out of all of them. He's going to have the ball in his hands a ton. Probably projects to have 7 to 8 assists at least. Could score you 15 to 20 points, give you a couple boards, maybe a couple steals. Definitely think he's a strong cash and/or tournament target on both sites. Definitely a stronger play on FanDuel than he is on Draftkings, but wouldn't try to talk you off of him on Draftkings either. Hollis Thompson can kind of get hot and score 30 real points at any point. Not too interested in him or Stauskas, but I can see him as tournament targets for really low ownership with some ceiling, since there's so much usage to go around in the matchup. I'll bring it back on the other side with the Grizzlies. Kind of tough to tell where their minutes and usage is going to be tonight. We've got Zach Randolph back tonight, is going to play off the bench. Most of their main guys saw minutes into the 40s last night. Marc Gasol is a guy that has a 25.7% usage rate since Conley went down. Would expect it to be in the mid to upper 20s again in this matchup. Doesn't rebound much, but if he's ever going to rebound, this is the matchup to do it in without all of the Sixers big guys playing in this matchup, and he is handling the ball a ton, kind of at the top of the key for Memphis's offense, and then kind of distributing from there to their shooters, or trying to create his own. I mean, I think he's just a really nice floor candidate with some upside here. I think he's a strong target. The only thing I'm worried about is his minutes after last night. I mean, he has had an injury history with his lower body. Could be a spot against Philly where they try to limit him off of the big game last night. So I think he might be an interesting tournament fade just because he should be really highly owned after that huge performance last night. But maybe his minutes trend down a little bit. And there's also Zach Randolph to come back and take a bunch of extra shots and maybe a couple of his minutes. Still think he's a legitimate cash play and tournament play as well, because he is carrying a nice ceiling if he should see mid-30s minutes again, but I don't know about it in this spot. I still think Troy Daniels is interesting. Seen a 24.9% usage rate and 32 minutes a game in the last 4 since Conley went down, but his price is starting to creep up, and Zach Randolph usually has like a 28 to 30% usage. I mean, he's going to take, or I'm assuming he's going to take away a lot of the shots now that he is back with the second unit. So I'm not sure that Daniels is as strong of a target today. Still think you could play him in tournaments, but I would be off him in cash games, especially on Draftkings where his price is 4.7K and you can just pay 600 extra to get to Rodney Hood. Tony Allen, same kind of thing. Not sure what to expect from him minutes and shots wise in this game. Probably wouldn't play him in cash. Think he's a reasonable tournament target, but I'm not too into him. Andrew Harrison, same kind of thing. Not sure where his minutes are going to be. It seems like he's pretty much splitting the point guard minutes right down the middle with Wade Baldwin here. And at the price point, I think I'd rather play Tyler Johnson. I'd rather play Sergio Rodriguez. I'd rather go down and play Patty Mills. I just think there's better options in cash. I guess you could play him in tournaments, but I don't really see the ceiling there, so I'm not really on him a whole lot. And I don't really want to play Zach Randolph coming off of a multi-game absence. I know it wasn't for an injury, but he wasn't really doing it before he left. I don't see any reason to expect him to kind of come back and be more fantasy relevant in his first game back. So if I'm targeting anybody from Memphis in cash, I think it's going to be Marc Gasol. The second guy would probably be Tony Allen, but I don't want to do that. And all the guys I want to play on Philadelphia side of the ball, Sergio, Darius Saric, Ilyasova, and Holmes, I think are all in really, really good spots. Strong targets, cash, and or tournaments. So that will do it for the slate. Thank you guys for tuning in, and best of luck tonight in your games.